There we go. Good evening. Welcome to the Singles Oasis. It's Mary, the host of the Singles Oasis. The Singles Oasis is a ministry of refuge and a gathering place for singles. Here at the Singles Oasis, singles will receive biblical wisdom and wise counsel that will help them in their walk with Christ. Our foundational scripture for the ministry is where there is no counsel, the people fail. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And that comes from Proverbs 11 and 14. If you are watching for the first time, please let us know in the chat. If you're a returning viewer, thank you for tuning in again. Please like and share the broadcast, share with your followers, your friends, and family. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So tonight on episode 4 of the Singles Oasis, we are discussing dating, trauma, and domestic violence. Given the size of the topic, we will primarily focus on dating and domestic violence. We'll get a little bit into trauma, but for part 2, we will get more into detail as to trauma. So tonight, I am so excited. I have 2 very special guests, Danielle Flint and Marcia Gregory. Both Danielle and Marcia are social workers and therapists with busy practices. So let me tell you a little bit more about our special guest speakers. So Marcia is a social worker at Wood Creek Elementary School in Farmington Hills. She graduated from Eastern Michigan and Wayne State University, where she obtained her master's social work degree. Her educational background includes serving as adjunct faculty at Wayne County Community College in the sociology department and as a mental health consultant for Matrix Head Start. She is a child advocate and mental health enthusiast. Ms. Gregory has dedicated 7 years of service to the Children's Center, where she was a children's therapist, rendering outpatient and home-based services for 6 years. With the Detroit Public Schools Community District. What a tongue clanger. Yeah. In the position of equity lead for DPSCD, where she was charged with providing professional development to district administrators and staff on equity, diversity, inclusion, and responsive teaching. Marcia Gregory currently sits on the Ethics Committee for the National Association of Social Workers of Michigan chapter. She is a published writer and has publications featured in the professional social work journal, The Bridge. Last but not least, Miss Danielle Flint. Danielle is a passionate, determined, and community-oriented social worker and clinical therapist with a cooperatively owned therapy practice located in Southfield, Michigan. She has 18 years of experience working with children and families surviving and healing from intimate partner abuse, child abuse, neglect, and oppressive systems. Danielle has led therapy groups with male perpetrators and actively supporting surviving women and children to leave abusive and controlling relationships. She currently does trauma-informed therapy with adolescent and young adult abuse survivors. Before we dive into our discussion and before I share some statistics, I just want to say that the subject matter we are sharing tonight may be triggering. It may be upsetting to some. We are covering material that may not be suitable for young children. So if you do have young children in the room, we just want to say parental discretion is advised, just because of the subject matter we are discussing. And again, it may be triggering. It may not be a place where you want your children to listen to this. But again, we do want to encourage you to like, share the broadcast. So let me share some domestic violence statistics very briefly before I turn the stage over to our 2 special guests. So more than 30% of women in the United States have experienced intimate partner violence, and it represents the leading cause of homicide or death for women. And this was taken from an article from the World Journal of Psychiatry. 3 in 10 women, which equates to 29%, and 1 in 10 men, about 10%, in the U.S. have experienced sexual assault, physical violence, or stalking by a partner and have reported it as having related impact on their functions. And this comes from the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Women between the ages of 18 to 24 and ages of 25 to 34 generally experience the highest rates of intimate partner violence. And the World Health Organization estimates that globally, about 1 in 3, about 30% of women worldwide have been subjected to either physical or sexual intimate partner violence or non partner sexual violence in their lifetime. Ladies, you ready to dive in?
Let's
Absolutely.
dive in.
Okay, so my first question to have is, so we're talking about domestic violence, but I think that there are a lot of misconceptions surrounding domestic violence, and many think that domestic violence is limited to a particular type. But what is domestic violence? Who wants to start first?
Can start. I'll say that domestic violence is a form of violence that is physical, mental, emotional, and financial in nature. It is something that we have traditionally actually called domestic violence, and more I just want to name more recently that folks are talking about intimate partner violence, right? So it's not always what we think about domestic is that it is something that's happening in the home, and more traditionally, that that has been our how we have been um, made aware of it is something that's happened in the home between spouses or partners, but you don't have to be a cohabitating partner to be experiencing partner violence. So what we talk about most often is physical, but as we will be talking a lot more about, that is actually not even the most common form of intimate partner violence. And I'll let Marcia.
Absolutely. And I just want to add, like Danielle mentioned, oftentimes we kind of think, oh, well, that's between maybe a man and a woman that live together, and he's had a few too many and knocking her over at night. That's not even, that's not even a fraction of the victims that are experiencing it. I know. Being a school social worker, I had middle school students in some form of domestic violence situations. I have worked with adults, and it goes across even within the church, right? So it doesn't discriminate. It's black, it's white, it's um, all across all social economic positions. Educated, uneducated, like you name it. And so sometimes we kind of lose sight of that and think that it's limited to one specific group or population, and it's not. And sometimes when we kind of have a vision of what it looks like, we miss it and can find ourselves in those situations because you think, oh, that'll never happen to me, right? If someone's treating me bad or doing things I don't like, or if I'm feeling that I'm being in a situation like this, I'll know it and I'll get out, or and it's definitely it's much deeper than that.
So, what are some other examples of domestic violence?
So the ones I just named, there's also some in the dating realm. So just like this is a podcast for singles, and I'll share my example later, but you have to be careful when you're dating, because that can even exist in relationships that are haven't even transitioned to a relationship yet, just in the dating phase. And there's often a grooming or things that as the manipulator or the abuser does along the way to kind of get you trapped in a sense. So you have to watch out for that. I think later on we're going to cover green flags versus red flags, and so many times we hear about, well, what this is a no and this is a no, but it's important that we talk about what are some positive signs and signals for dating. So I think that's one that gets overlooked, is that you do not have to be in an intimate relationship with a person for domestic abuse to be occurring.
Yeah, thank you for that, Marcia. And so I would say it's there are different examples of intimate partner violence situations, um, But I'm thinking there's also something really important to name here, which is the phases. And so it doesn't start, as Marcia said, inside the home where someone is physically hitting you. It doesn't start there. It starts with things like isolating.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
starts with things like a person wanting to monopolize your time. It starts with things like monopolizing a person's access to things like their phone, their access to transportation, their job, um, their education.
Wow.
And so the deeper that a person gets into a violent situation like this, the more diverse the forms of violence become.
Yeah.
So having access to a person's bank account, having access to their um, things like their job and being able to go and try to get them fired, or um, harass their colleagues and things like that. So there are types of manipulation, as Marcia was naming, that maybe once in a while don't seem like they are constituting abuse, physical
Mhm.
abuse, but those are the things that lead to the physical abuse. And I do want to name a very important piece about emotional abuse that is actually a lot more common. And often I've had clients that patients that I've worked with who came into therapy after years and years of an abusive relationship, not able to see and really understand that they are an abuse survivor, because it was all emotional in nature. It was all power and control working
Mhm.
in a
Mhm.
way that doesn't necessarily ascribe to physical violence. I don't have to have bruises to be a survivor of emotional abuse.
And often that can be even more harmful than physical abuse. Just giving um, just your emotional, psychological well-being is so very important. And when that's at risk, there that could lead to so many things. And then also when you there's children involved, so it's just everyone who's connected to that person in a sense suffers. So it can be very detrimental, that psychological and emotional abuse for sure.
Something that I want to ask, because I want to go back to a comment that you made about monitoring phone calls. So let's just say hypothetically, someone was in a past relationship. This person, um, this was a longer term relationship. And this person found out that their partner was um, going through their phone um, unknowingly. So basically, while either while they were sleeping or not looking, and it arose to the point where their partner actually started calling some of the people that she spoke to um, last, and then she actually spoke to some of those folks, and they said, "Hey, just to let you know, your partner called me, and he was like basically grilling me." So
Mhm.
here's my question. Um, is that concerning behavior? And why is it concerning behavior?
That's a major boundary being crossed. That's going into someone's phone. I always say someone's property is an extension of them. So violating them in that way, anything that you're doing without permission, you're doing sneakily, and it's just a complete violation of that person's rights, of that person's sense of security. I mean, your phone has all your messages and people you're in contact with. It's such an invasion of privacy. So absolutely, that's wrong. But that is behavior that is definitely a red flag and very concerning. Often, it's interesting. I think about my youth that I work with and hearing them say, another one common is sharing location and how they feel. You know how you can now on the phones turn your location on and off, and the significance of them wanting to know where their partner is at all times and things like that. So someone making them or requiring them to do that is, along the same lines. Why are we demanding access to a person's phone, which is messages, and often even in their notes or things they've downloaded? So someone's interests or interpersonal thoughts and things like that um, is definitely concerning.
Okay. And we'll come back to some of those, we'll get into those green flags and red flags a little bit later. But um, I have not seen this in quite some time, but I am somewhat familiar with the power and control wheel. But what is that for our audience that's unfamiliar with the power and control wheel? And why is it so important or relevant to our current conversation?
Yeah, so the power and control wheel, which might be helpful to drop in the chat for folks who want to take a look at a visual of it. What me and Marcia are fairly familiar with it, so
Mm-hmm.
it looks, you can look at it and it kind of looks like a slice of pie,
Mm-hmm.
and the power. There are levels to it, and so there's an outside layer that really indicates that all the things on the inside do constitute violence. They're just not all physical. So the little, what we might call the crust, right, the outer
Mm-hmm.
crust, is using violence that is very outward and clear, so physical sexual violence. And then the slices of the pie are giving examples that are about name calling, intimidation. They're about using the children and manipulating children. People use pets,
Yeah.
abuse pets, and threaten pets. There is the finances, like I spoke of, around having shared accounts or having access to each other's accounts, which I have a friend whose former partner essentially cleaned out her bank account in spite because he still had the passwords of everything, right? There is the manipulation through isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So if one example is, Mary, if I told you 2 plus 2 is 5, and no one else around you, no one else was able to be around you, right, to tell you that 2 plus 2 is not 5, but I am controlling you in such a way that you don't have an opportunity to be around anyone else to tell you that 2 plus 2 is 5. 2 plus 2 is not 5. So when we're in these situations, it's really important for an abuser to keep you away from the people who would hold you accountable. It's really important for them to keep you away from things that would allow you to have your own autonomy, such as financial resources, a job, things like that, and keep you away from things and people that would challenge anything that person says. So it's the "you made me do this to you." If you were sitting hanging out with your girlfriends and name that's what your partner said, then it would be obvious. But if partner is not allowing you to hang out with friends, you never get that.
And the term gaslighting kind of comes to mind, right? Because that whole, you probably think, well, wait a minute, 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 5, but it kind of challenges your reality and your perception of things that are right and truthful. Like they will have you convinced that, and that, what they're saying is true, and anything that goes against it is wrong or you're crazy or you're like, it becomes you're the issue. And they use persuasion and manipulation to basically have you, you know, following along with them and what they're telling you, and before you know it, you know, you're all consumed with them. So it's a dangerous game.
What are like some common misconceptions about domestic violence? I do believe that people have a basic understanding of what it is, but what are some of the misconceptions that you're currently seeing by nature of your practice, or maybe by nature of either what you're seeing online or even what you're, um, experiencing while you're amongst the public?
Mhm. I would say that um, anyone using a vulnerability of yours and weaponizing that can easily constitute a domestic violence situation. I had a client who worked and went to school, and when her baby's father got mad at her, refused to watch the baby. I remember she had a big test, her final exam, and he did not show up for her. She failed it and had to retake the course. But just using that, I know you need me for X, Y, and Z. Never put his hands on her, but it's stuff like that. You're relying on me. I have this, and she was working and supporting the family. So I think that's a misconception too. She was holding it down, and he, you know, stayed home with the kids, didn't work, wasn't educated or anything. So when we think about the power dynamic, it doesn't necessarily have to be the one making the most money or the one who's in a higher position socially, right? You could be all those things, the breadwinner for your household and the one doing X, Y, and Z, and still find yourself being victimized by this person. So I think that example just kind of threw me, that this woman who you know, had a lot of things going for her, but had this partner. And I think that's another one to mention. A lot of people think that uh, there's a certain look, right? There are women who are men and women who are incredibly attractive, have so many things going for them, and still find themselves in this situation. So I think society tells us it's a look, it's a demographic graphic, it's a it, just this skewed picture
A
of how it
character
might look.
flaw, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not the case. It's
Yeah.
women, six-figure making women who are powerful and have all these wonderful things going for them in a domestic violence situation. So just, you know, it would surprise you. What and once that person finds out what your vulnerabilities are and uses them to weaponize you, it's almost like they have you, in a sense. I know, you know, this is geared towards women who are dating, and a lot of women who, myself included, will come upon someone who, wow, he checks all the boxes and he's this and he's that and whatever, and just wanting so badly to be in a relationship with someone, thinking, oh, this is Prince Charming, you know, this is you know, who I envision for myself. They have a hard time believing that, you know, okay, this is not right. We overlook those things, or we let things pass that we shouldn't. Um,
Can
so
I
the,
can I name a couple of things I
yes.
want to common misconceptions is that
Mhm.
it's just about getting away. You just got to get away and you'll be okay.
Ooh.
There are there are people for whom that is so untrue
Mhm.
that they don't leave because they don't have any other resources. And so I've been a person who has sat with um people. I don't want us to assume that it's always just women,
Right.
but I have sat with partners who are primarily responsible for the caregiving of children.
Mhm.
And because partner is that charismatic other parent that the children love, how dare I take that away from these kids. So these are the types of things that are entering into their mind. So it's this psychological sort of manipulation and mental gymnastics that one has to do to make it okay to stay. So it's not just about getting away. In fact, it's not even just about getting away one time, right?
Mm.
Research shows that some women don't survive, and the most the most dangerous time for a person to leave a violent relationship. I mean, the most dangerous time for a person in a domestic violence situation is after they have left. That is the time when they are at greatest risk of death. The other thing I want to say is that it's not just about personal responsibility. That's a thing that we have said to our sisters and brothers past. You just gotta be stronger. You just gotta be, whatever, right? There's got to be something in your character that makes you strong enough to leave. And if you didn't leave, that was your fault. And that is just not true. We are a nation of people who preach personal responsibility, and what we don't think about is the fact that we are all hardwired for community.
Absolutely.
So we cannot do anything alone. Even single parents, we're not doing anything by ourselves. We have community. And so if we don't have support because we have been alienated and isolated, then what is my responsibility and how will I do it? Right? It's not about personal responsibility. It is about calling in folks who will be in community with you for the emotional support, for the physical support, for shelter, for new clothes. I mean, I've had a client whose ex broke into her house and poured bleach all over her children's clothes, all over the boys' PlayStation, right? These are the things that are not as simple as just leave. I have a client who has to monitor how long it takes this person to get out of jail, the 90 days he had to do because she called the police on him when he showed up to her house, smacking his car into her car. So these are the types of things that I just really want people to be clear that these are misconceptions. These are common myths.
Now, something that I commonly see, and I do not want to disregard this particular tool in the legal process. I definitely don't want to do that, but something that is commonly thrown around a lot. And again, I do not think people really understand, again, the difficulty in, getting away from an abusive spouse, getting away from an abusive ex-partner, is that I see people yell all the time, well, go get a PPO. How come you didn't go get a PPO?
Yeah.
And I guess what my concern is, in instances where, we may have a single that does get the PPO, but what can that single do if they find themselves in a situation where they're trying to escape from the relationship and they have concerns about their life, they have concerns about their children? What can they do to get to a safe place?
Because, well, like you said, essentially a PPO is a piece of paper. It's an order of protection, right? But it does not. What it states is, in the event that this person violates X, Y, and Z, there's consequences and repercussions. You call the police, they'll come out, but you're still could very easily be in imminent danger. And so, like you said, I have a friend who's in a situation like this, who left her husband, and guess what? That he's still granted visitation. He still knows where she lives. She still resides in the family home. So that constant looking over the shoulder, the constant having emergency plans, and wondering when will be the day, or this will be the day that she meets her fate. And it's just tremendously sad having to go through life. Life is hard in itself, but carrying that on your back at all times. It's she shared with me, we have a code, if you will, or if I get a text from her, that means guess what, or I remember she revealed to me she it's really, it's hard to talk about, but one of her children is close to driving age, and
Mhm.
she showed him the route to get to my house. And she said, she told him, no matter what, you pack you and your sibling in the car and just get to Marcia's house. So, and just the thought of that just gave me chills, because now you have to include the children. The children have to be a part of the safety plan. And so, can you imagine just being a mom and just carrying that and having to, share that with your children? Or I don't know, it's hard, it's difficult to talk about, and I can't even imagine being the one in that situation. I like watching those crime shows, right? So you have your Datelines, your Fatal Attractions, and things like that, because I'm really curious, me being a social scientist, in the just the psychology behind it, and the patterns and the trends, and just like, wow. You hear they start off with the story of how wonderful they were and how they fell in love so quick and blah blah blah, and then it turns tragic. And it's like, wow, it's just going from being romantically involved with someone to then taking their life, and just that span of the relationship. It's all very interesting, and it happens a lot. Like those statistics you went over, it's just staggering, and it's almost unbelievable. So yeah, it's a lot. And I think there needs to be definitely more efforts and more platforms to have these type of discussions, and to talk about ways to prevent it, preventative measures. How do we, you know, uh, keep ourselves as women safeguarded from situations like this? And not to say that, men can't find this situation themselves in these situations, because they do, but just as individuals, how do we safeguard, and what do we look out for? Especially in a society where we know it's hard to date. We know it's hard to, um, you know, uh, many of us are seeking marriage and wanting these things. So it's kind of like, how do we get out there and date and mingle and things like that and stay safe? We have to have these discussions.
We not only have to have these discussions, we definitely should be, using the Bible in terms of the framework. So the Bible does, and we don't have time to get into that discussion, but on a different segment, I want to talk about that. But there are chapters in the New Testament, certain things that we should be looking out for. Like, we definitely should not be fellowshipping with darkness. We need to be careful about being unequally yoked.
Yeah.
How can I fellowship with darkness? One is going to hate the other.
Yeah, that's right.
What type of clothes? The Bible talks about, old clothes. When we put those old clothes off, we're not supposed to put those new clothes back on. There's certain things, for one, that we should not engage in, but there's certain types of people that we should avoid, like, period. Like, folks should not even be attracted to us based upon what is said in the Bible. But I want to go back to something, Marcia, that you said a few moments ago, and you mentioned, you and your client were talking about a safety plan.
Yes.
What does a safety plan encompass? What is that?
Yep. And so, yep. So me and my friend, we have one, but also, yes, I do advise it for our clients as well. Is a plan of action, a very concrete. If I'm ever in danger, this is what I'm going to do. This is I'm notifying my boss, sometimes you got to go to human resources. If you see this make and model of car, if you I have to do this, so literally for myself, for my situation. If you see this make and model of car, or I provided a picture of the individual, I am to be notified, and he's not supposed to be on the premises. So that's might be what it'll look like. Letting your boss know, hey, if I did a no call and no show, that's not typical behavior for me. You need to alert the authorities, right? Here's emergency contact numbers. Um, uh, if you have a neighbor to look out for you, or people, neighbors or people who are nearby, if you see these lights flicking or just some type of signal, call for help. This is my code word. If we're ever on the phone and I say, hey, whatever you want phrase you might want to say, that means okay, that I need help. A lot of people don't know this. You can text 911. So if you're ever in a situation where you need to go hide, ringer off, location on, and texting 911, making sure doors and access points are locked. It might even be hiding weapons throughout your home. When it's serious, and these are just things that you have to do. You might have to keep a bag of, in case you need to just run, change your clothes, uh, your necessary medications, things like that, in a bag in your car. I always say, check your car before you get in your car, especially those of us who have these big old SUVs, double check, right? So it's just things. If you're a person who has a personalized license plate, get rid of it. It's, try to make your car as unmarkable as possible. These are just a few things you could do to try to put yourself in the best possible situation should danger occur. A lot of people don't like to hear this, but you might have to get off social media. If I'm posting up, hey, I'm at Club Duo, me and my girl, things like that, and you have someone who, might be looking for you, stalking you, or that could put you in danger, that's something you might have to consider as well. So, and there's a ton of other things, depending on your situation. But just being smart as a person who, I think making sure you're having appropriate boundaries in place in general is a good safeguard. Even if you're not in a domestic violence situation, just really going over accessibility and boundaries. I think that's very important.
Danielle, did you want to add to that in terms of what else may be included in a safety plan?
Yeah, well, we have seen tons of different types of safety plans, like Marcia said, around including the children, being prepared to perhaps leave everything if you have to. There are ways to protect yourself in the workplace and housing. Mary, you're an attorney, so you may be familiar with the Violence Against Women Act, VAWA.
Yes.
So that gives these protections and housing in your workplace, and prevention support, even cyber crimes. So it's the things that will help you, as long as you're resourceful. I would say definitely, to Marcia's point about being smart.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes that verbal and emotional abuse does have folks sometimes thinking that they're not smart. They're not smart enough to get away. Right? So remember, I don't want you to think about this subjective term of being smart. We are just asking that you be resourceful. One of the things that I believe is, as a loved one, and as a friend, as a sister in community, that I am constantly doing as a person on the outside of these situations, is reminding people, reminding my sisters, reminding my siblings and community that I am always safe. 100% of the time. I am always a safe person. You give me a signal, I'll pick it up. We got it. I am always a person you can come to if you are feeling ashamed. There is no shame here. If you are feeling unsafe for in any situation, you need to have that one friend that is good in an emergency, who
Yes.
can pick up and know exactly the thing to get ready to do, and places to go, and options. There are domestic violence shelters that we don't even know exist in the community,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So these are options that are there. We sometimes, have, back in the day, it was just it was the neighbors, it was the community, it was, I know somebody you can go sleep with tonight, so nobody knows where you are. And as funding is being removed from um, initiatives like, things in support of survivors of intimate partner violence, the children of survivors, and that kind of thing, uh, those resources are being removed, funding is being removed. And
Mhm.
so what we're needing to do is create an environment of safety within community in an informalized way, so that we all know that we have people that we can come to and that our loved ones can go to, where they will have discretion and secrecy, and
Yeah.
um a warm bed or whatever. And so I just urge people to really be thinking about, what is your thing in that. Marcia, my friend, you are such a good cook. I'm gonna call you
Oh,
if I have a friend, right? If I have a
absolutely.
friend who needs a meal,
Absolutely.
right? And her kids need a meal, or their kids need a meal.
Absolutely.
What are the roles we can play,
I love
right?
that. Yeah.
That we can be of support and mutual aid to one another. Sorry, I have to mute myself. Mutual aid to one another, so
Mhm.
that when these things happen, we're prepared.
Yep. And I think that hits on a good point. Like we talk about often, survivors have been isolated for so long. And so, how being sure to still maintain those contacts and those supports. And like you said, as as sisters can be a safety person who, like you said, there's no shame here. There's no room for no shame. I won't even ask any questions. What is it that you need? Um, and I know there's a host of community resources. I think everybody can be a hero and help combat domestic violence. Signs are there. When you have friends who you've noticed are in new relationships or situationships and things like that that you haven't heard from, or might be moving differently, or sometimes you might just have a little inkling like, I wonder. Check on those people. Check on your friends. Be a friend. Right? Don't always assume. You know how you hear people say, oh, she got a new man and she just left her. Don't do that. Be supportive. Be there for your friend. You sometimes just have no idea. I've been to funerals of victims of domestic violence, and they all get up there and say, we had no idea. I did not know. Oh my gosh. He was such a, you hear about Mr. Right, Mr. Charming, he and all these,
Charismatic person, right?
yes,
And that
right?
can be any gender, right?
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
charismatic person, that's
yes.
another slice of that power and control wheel, Mary. I
Mhm.
don't mean to cut you off, Marcia, but that slice of the power and control wheel that's a little outdated. They talk about using male privilege, but essentially it's just using resources
Mhm.
to position yourself as being able to have power over,
Mhm.
Mm.
right? So back in the day, like Marcia talked about the date lines in the 2020s and whatever, where people are saying like, she called someone, she tried to get this person,
Mhm.
that person tried to get away,
Mhm.
right? And the crux is, when you call the police are not necessarily equipped to
Mhm.
deal with the manipulation, right? Police officers, you have perpetrators of this violence who are a part of law enforcement,
That part.
right? And so you start to
Yep.
you start to really learn helplessness and hopelessness. When I called the police, but my husband just became such a charmer, turned on that charisma,
Mm-hmm.
and now they never come back for me.
Mm-hmm.
They think I'm being, and so then they frame you in a certain kind of way. Oh, you know how that person is, and how we
Mm-hmm.
how we as lay people name mental health conditions, first of all, as excuses for
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
violence, and secondly, as things that, like, if that's what it is, we just not dealing with it, we just not gonna
Mm-hmm.
deal with it, when in reality, mental health, anger issues, any of it, none of it is an excuse for violence.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're talking about the red flags and the green flags, it's often that whether this person is male or woman, that we can utilize our positionality. We
Mm-hmm.
are, the CEO of the local organization. We are whatever, and we have all these things. And why would I be
Yes.
sexually assaulting a person?
Right.
I'm
I can
so
get anybody I want, right? Yeah.
get anybody I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're talking about this positionality of, like Marcia said, not like, it doesn't matter how educated you are, because manipulators are there too. Abusers are there too.
Part. That part.
There's a whole because I've worked with perpetrators, there is a whole, like, feedback loop that they have
Mm-hmm.
around the things that they use, the things that they say to each other, to themselves, to rationalize this
Exactly.
violence. So they're never really held accountable. All they do is the obligatory anger management, because the
Mm-hmm.
system is not responding to what the real issue is,
Right.
because we're not socializing kid boys and girls to not only know the red flags, but to know what's important about their value set, what their north star is, what their purpose is, that then it makes it easy for them to get off track and then start really early, like
Mm-hmm.
Marcia said, middle schoolers
Mm-hmm.
in violent situations, middle schoolers who are being name called and threatened, and kids getting in trouble at school. I was an education advocate for 7 years, and I have been the advocate for an actual victim, a survivor of sexual assault, where she was sexually assaulted in the school building, and they wanted to expel her
Mm-hmm.
from school for 180, the entire school year, 180 days. They tried to expel this child for being in the building in the wrong part of the building. So because they both did it, she's being expelled and he's being expelled too. Those are the types of things that, when I name, like, systems are not responsive to these things, I do believe that we have to be responsive in the ways that the systems are not, by
Mm-hmm.
starting with that socialization really early, and being in communication, even when our kids are in those angsty teen years and they don't want to talk about stuff. We need to continue to reaffirm them, because what we know as social workers is that, for as much as there are outside influences, peer influences, the friends and the whomever, the highest influence, the most important and pivotal influence in a kid, an adolescent's life, is their parent.
Yeah.
What they hear from their parent, are their parents speaking life into them?
Mm-hmm.
Are their parents praying for and with them?
Mm.
Their parents affirming their ego integrity? Are their parents
Mm-hmm.
um, doing things and making them do things
Yeah.
that would be illegal or non-consensual, right? They would never be able to make them do in adulthood. Disrupting your own boundaries,
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
disrupting children's boundaries. Kids
Right.
get to have boundaries.
Since we're on the topic of children, because I'm so glad that you brought this up, how does domestic violence, how does intimate partner violence affect children, especially when you're dealing with parents that are married, or even parents that are now divorced and there's a divorce because of domestic violence?
Whew. That could easily be a whole segment because the
Listen,
impact is so tremendous,
it
from
is.
learned behaviors
Yep.
to
Yep.
parents using children as
Yep.
pawns
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
to then those children, and
And
this
they
is how,
facilitate the abuse.
yeah,
Right?
yep, yep,
It can, yeah, yes, to Marcia's point, it is
yeah,
incredibly deep how far it gets, because the touch on trauma that I just got a name because I'm a trauma therapist, is
Mm-hmm.
that there
appreciate
is trauma that impacts those children. It may be that they're experiencing the same, thing because they're in the same household and things like
you.
that. But whatever the experience was, from the standpoint, from the positionality of that child, is going to differ from child to child.
Hmm.
So, to
Absolutely.
Marcia's point, it might be one kid has learned that violence against mom is okay, so they start fighting mom,
Yep,
or they learn that violence in intimate relationships is not only okay, it is how you show your love.
yep, yep,
It can be the kids that are seeking validation only through you. He don't love me if he don't hit me,
that part.
if he not trying to fight me. And those are the things that they start with as early as adolescence,
Mhm.
understanding. So it's a psychological trauma that you sit with. Your nervous system is deeply impacted. We don't
Yep,
have to go deep into trauma because that really is a whole different
yep,
segment. But
Mm-hmm.
just to clear, how does it affect the children? It's
mhm,
trauma. Babies are, I've helped families get literally run out the house as it was catching on fire,
mhm,
where in the morning the children barely woke up, were awake and still wearing their pajamas, while their house was being burned to the ground.
mhm.
We've got kids who are so dysregulated, they don't know how to have relationships.
Yep,
They don't trust anybody. I have
mhm,
clients today in their early 20s who are so emotionally weathered from the dynamics that they experience, the abuse dynamics that they experience in childhood, that never were perpetrated on them. It's the
yep.
exposure, it's the secondary trauma,
Vicarious.
it's the vicarious trauma that then they grow into adulthood. And not only do they not want to have relationships
Mhm,
because they're afraid, but
mhm.
they are tethered to a parent who is not allowing them to go and be
Right.
adults and experience those things because they're so afraid of what's going to happen to that parent survivor.
Mhm,
I'm afraid that you're going to find another one of those abusers, mom. I'm
mhm,
afraid that if I'm not here for you constantly, that
mhm,
I can't trust that the house will be safe when I come back.
mhm.
Wow.
And a lot of them will harbor some of that. Well, if only I did this, or if
Yes, self
only how
blame.
I could have been the hero or the savior in this situation. And they carry that, or it's just, um, and then, like, the old school saying, well, if a little boy at school hits you, that just means he likes you. And how that even came to be a thing. And even recently I heard someone say it in the elementary school. I'm talking the 2025, you know
Mhm.
this
And
school
that's
year
and
is.
that's an example of the way we're
Mhm,
socializing our
mhm,
children
mhm.
to, we don't even
They're
realize that
socialized
was
into that.
absolutely, we
Mhm.
don't even realize when I was little and I said so and so such and such is bullying me, and my parents say he likes you, or the teacher says because he likes you.
Oh, he just.
Those are the that is where those are the examples of where the
Mhm.
problem lies, is
Mhm.
that in the beginning, yeah, that kid might be troubled at home, that kid might be getting hit at home, and so that's why all of this is happening. So you are failing the person who is being harmed
Mhm.
by just laughing off or being cute
Mhm.
or coy or whatever about being bullied,
Yep.
frankly.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
then on the other hand, you are failing the child who is doing that bullying or acting
That's
out
right.
toward somebody, because then it's then what they're learning, what you're socializing into them, is that they don't that what they do doesn't need to have accountability,
Mhm.
right? So this girl is being, her needs are being disregarded and disrupted, her boundaries are being disrupted, and let's just say, it's a little boy who, even if he does like her, this is teaching that violence is actually commonplace and that it
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
should be commonplace in these relationships. And yet, we're giving personal responsibility to that young woman when she got 2 and 3 kids with a man at 23, 24, 25. I don't even care the age, it can be 45,
Mhm.
50,
Mhm.
that she learned from very early ages that not only do her needs not matter,
Mhm.
but that what love looks like is fighting and
Mhm.
physical violence and
Mhm.
these types of things. And so we visit that upon our children even more so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And I know that we switched to children, but let's switch back to
Mhm.
adults.
Mhm.
How does domestic violence affect our psyche? How does it affect
Mhm.
our mental well being, our mind, and even our body? How does it
Mhm.
affect us?
Well, for one, it rewires your whole chemistry, from your the way you respond to things, and what that looks like is the way you respond to things, the way you interpret and hear situations and things, the way you process experiences, your perceived uh, threat of danger, how you it shows up in the workplace. It shows up in other relationships. It shows up with how you uh, even present your whole way you present yourself to the world, how you carry yourself. It has a tremendous impact on your self esteem. Some people become hypersexual. Some people become incredibly depressed. Some people will venture off into substance abuse.
Mm,
So you might have domestic violence, but then that compiled with other mental health issues that may be at play,
mhm,
or just other, depending on what age you're in,
Mhm.
perimenopause,
Yeah.
menopause, or things like that,
mhm,
pregnancy,
mhm,
whatever. The combination, it makes for a formula where your whole genetic makeup has been changed to some extent.
Hmm.
Um,
That's
yeah,
literal, right?
like
It's
yeah, like literally, yeah,
literally. So we're
yeah.
talking about trauma. So what Marcy is describing is trauma. It's emotional
mhm,
trauma. And so we talk about, folks know what PTSD is, post traumatic stress disorder.
mhm,
And um, the thing that we often don't recognize is there is something called toxic stress.
Yes.
And toxic stress is a type of, it is a form of trauma that is more sustained over time, and um, it is not confined to one event and one situation and one place and point in time. It is multiple traumas, right? It's multiple traumatic situations that build and
Yep.
really have an impact on your endocrine system. So it has you, it, when you perceive danger, right?
mhm,
Or survival, your brain stem. right? The oldest part of your brain, the most ancient part of your brain is your brainstem. When you feel attacked, then that part is up, right? It takes your hormones, your stress hormones, and it has them moving, and the your extremities have less blood, and so it goes into your trunk. It helps you to do something like fight,
Fight
flight,
or flight, yeah.
freeze, right?
Yeah.
And so when we are thinking about that, it's, can I be fast enough to get away? Do I have to fight? Do I have to play dead like a possum, right? And those are the things that then happen in the system, is the stress hormones. So cortisol, adrenaline. Those are the things that are telling you you need to survive. Well, imagine
Being
that
like,
happening 10 times.
yeah.
Mm.
Happening 10 times over 1 year, right? And that, what that means is the brain doesn't have the brain, the body, the nervous system doesn't have the awareness that trauma, that the danger is gone
Right.
anymore, because it's
The
so
use.
used to
Yeah.
those spikes, right? And the spikes happen, and then what happens is that your brain keeps you there
Yep.
at that spike. And when you're still up there and you're only up there, you don't have a good sense of where danger actually is. You perceive danger everywhere. And what that does over time, we talk about cortisol belly.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is. You're storing fat because you're trying to, because your ancient brain is actually trying to figure out ways to survive from
Yeah.
situations, whether it's a car accident, whether it's sexual assault, whether it's physical violence, whether it is having a traumatic labor, birth situation, whether it's breaking your leg, right? Things like that. And so, what Marcia is talking about is that when those stress hormones are constantly moving in your brain, what it starts to do is give you a really hard time with basic executive functioning.
Yeah.
So, decision making. I've
Mm.
already said how you actually perceive real versus perceived danger.
Memory loss, right?
Memory loss,
That's a
right?
big one. Yep.
Your judgment centers. Can I
Yep.
trust this person or can I
Right.
not? It affects our attachment style, and that's the thing
That's a
you
big
realize
one.
as well, right? Is the
Your
attachment style.
Yep.
My attachments can be so disorganized that I can trust a stranger more than I can trust my partner, right? And that's totally possible. And the ultimate thing that it does, that it takes away from us, is gray matter in the brain is actually what we need to be artistic and creative and innovative. And when we have trauma coursing, those stress hormones coursing through us all the time, we are reducing the amount of gray matter in our brains. So then it makes us able to be less joyful, less artistic, less creative, less innovative. So it's taking things away from us. And
let me just slide this in. That, you know how people who have Alzheimer's or dementia, they're always studying the gray matter because
Yes.
that's what's impacted. That's what is lacking.
Yes.
And isn't that crazy though? How that like significant that could be. It also makes you more susceptible to cancers and illness. Your body,
autoimmune diseases.
exactly. Your body is not able to fight off. You get sick easier and faster. Your what am I thinking about? Your immune system is weakened. It's so many. The impacts are just so severe and significant. So it's definitely something that if you are experiencing this or have, definitely worth your while for your physical and mental health to seek services.
Mhm.
Get a good therapist, get into counseling, group settings, individual settings, because there is hope for these people. I think that's
You're
something that,
not broken.
yep, you
You're
are
not
not
broken.
broken, you are still whole, and there are resources for you. There's hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ladies, this has just been such a good discussion. You feel like you want to go a little bit longer? I know we're past our 1 hour time, but we're just flowing tonight.
I would love to hear some comments. We had one comment that I
Mhm,
saw,
mhm.
Yes, we had one
or
comment.
question.
Yes, we had one comment, and if anybody has any questions, uh, this individual said, I never thought of it that way. This is early on, Danielle, when you were talking, we were just going into the background of basically the basics of domestic violence and the different types of
Mm-hmm.
domestic violence. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that
that's a sign. That is my Cass Tech alum. Hi,
okay.
sign. Thank you for being here. If you're still here.
Yes, thank you. Yes, definitely thank you all who are viewing. Very quickly, before I conclude our conversation, because we kind of touched on it a little bit, where you've referenced the dating red flags and green flags. What are some dating red flags
Mhm.
for our singles that are out there? Because we definitely have to use wisdom, and we definitely need to be discerning. So when the Holy Spirit is giving us a check and
Amen.
saying, something's not right and you can't put your finger on it, you got to remember that the Holy Spirit sees what we do not see.
Amen. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we definitely need to be mindful of that. But what are some red flags? Because um at least for me, what I would imagine, as a red flag, I'm going
Mhm.
to find as a red flag, if you're not in a dating relationship with me, and you have some interest, in me, excuse me, if you have an interest
Mhm.
and you want to pursue me, but if there is a level of where um, ownership, if you're viewing me more so as trying to take ownership or claim,
Mhm.
I'm not going to like that, because that's just for one, that's disrespectful. Two, you don't know me that well. I don't know
Mhm.
you that well. Um, that's definitely a red flag. If I set a boundary, so let's say hypothetically, it's 7:37 right now,
Mhm.
and I say, if you're pursuing me, I say I don't take calls after 8 p.m.
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden, you're starting to call me after 8 p.m. every single day. I have a
To test
problem
the
with that.
boundary. Yep.
Yes, you're testing my boundaries. So testing my boundaries. So I don't want to dominate the conversation, but ladies,
That's a good
what are some
example,
red
though.
flags?
That's a good
Yeah.
example. Um, I know anyone wanting to move too fast. Um, I know there's all these books out here. One of the big ones is what is it? Think like act like a lady, think like a man, and how
Mhm.
this guy is supposed to pursue you, and he should be doing this, that, and a third. But also being very mindful of, while that's wonderful and might feel good and be nice that someone is wanting to take you out and pursue you, um it can also be disguised as dating versus I want to take consume your time.
Mhm.
I want to isolate you from your friends. I want to, because if you're with in front of me, I know what you're doing, what you're saying, whatever. So just wanting to preoccupy your time, um more than what is reasonable, is definitely, I see as being a red flag. Wanting to just any type of rushing. I want to meet your family. I want to meet your this and that. And I think as women of faith, we think, oh wow, this guy, he wants to court me, right? He wants to meet my mom and dad and all these wonderful things. And just like, while those things are nice and great, you have to really look at proximity and timing for things.
Mhm.
And just really using, like we talk about discernment, but our elders and those safe people in our lives, and having dialogue with them. I know for me, when I found myself in my situation, my godmother, who I love and trust, said, nope,
Mm-hmm.
and she was able to call it. And I found myself not wanting to share things with her because I kind of knew she gonna be like, Marcia, this is not right. This isn't it. And that's when I said, if I'm having to withhold information or even feeling like I want to, that's a red flag. You really relying on your judgment, your better judgment, and what you know is not right. Um, I think someone lavish gifts and things prematurely,
Mm-hmm.
such as expensive gifts or trips or things like that. We see it in the movies and we're taught like, oh wow, he really likes you. He's investing in you, things like that. But again, too much too soon is never a good sign. Um, and it just something you want to definitely just be on the lookout for. And does that make sense? Does this, is a person who barely knows someone investing all these resources, does that make sense, right? Does that seem logical? um so those are a few I have off the top.
Yeah, definitely echoing everything that Marcia said. I don't think that there's one of them I wrote down was when the partner does not like your friends. And
Mm.
particularly the dynamic of your friends don't respect me.
Mm,
Your and even church home.
mm,
There are
Mm.
churches that are that are really shaping standards of misogyny and patriarchy in the form of this is what God has for you, as a woman of God. So it's a person who manipulates your faith in God is a huge red flag. And people who don't want you to be around your friends because they're disrespectful, or because they say bad things about me, or because you know they're also single. This is another thing when people do not want you to be around, when that person doesn't want you to be around your single friends,
mm,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because this person is trying to make a judgment around who is what kind of influences you're
mm,
having. And remember, you are your own person.
mm,
You are a fully autonomous, independent person. And often when you're impacted by trauma, you don't know that. You don't actually know that inside of you. You don't have that internalized. So often we have to just remind them, you
mm,
are safe. You are okay. And you get to make the final judgment call about who you spend your time with, especially people who want to. I had a friend who she was with this person for 8, 9 years, and she was getting ready to marry him. And when it was occurring to her that he did not like her mother, he did not
mm,
like me. We've been friends for 30 years. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand why you. And so these were the things that were coming up, that were just really reminding, that were for her, just like by the grace of God, she got out of that situation. But to the point that he was she was actually rationalizing
mm.
reasons to be away from,
Um,
to not call your childhood best friend of
yeah,
30 years.
mm,
Why? It is a red flag that
absolutely.
the bestie and you can't talk anymore. What is happening? Where is it in your mind that it makes sense
Mhm,
that you shouldn't be able to talk to what it
mhm,
is that that person will hold you accountable. That person
mhm.
will say,
Yep, and
hey
you know
girl,
it.
hey
Yep.
girl, red flag. Me and Marcy are really good friends, and we can be honest with each other. Girl, that ain't right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that don't
That is
sound
not.
right.
And if a person is not letting you have access to that, that is an ulterior motive. I
Mhm.
need this
Exactly.
person to be away from a person who would say all the stuff about my shenanigans with this person.
Yeah.
I need them not to have access to that person. They making too much sense.
And they're going to call out. They're going to basically call out what's not in
The
order
behavior.
because
Absolutely.
what we don't realize, because Lord often puts friends in our lives. Like we have friends for a reason. Like there are friends that are born in adversity. There are friends that are closer to us, like a
Mhm.
brother, or in this instance, like a sister.
Mhm.
We're just in terms of relevancy, but our friends can see what we cannot see,
Mhm.
because there are times where our eyes are blinded.
Yeah.
There's either some type of um, there's some type of wool, and our friends are able to basically say, hey, this is what I see, remove the wool from your eyes. And I'm saying this
Mhm.
from a place out of love. I'm saying
Mhm.
this from a place, out of wisdom, especially if our friends have been similarly um, situated. What I wanted to ask specifically, so we've talked about those red flags. What are some green flags? And then before we close out, we can briefly just mention some potential resources that are out there and some books that we have help that are considered helpful, because I
Mhm.
definitely have some things. So what are some dating green flags for our singles?
I'd say someone who is willing to, not just only willing, but wanting to respect your boundaries, respect you as a whole individual and as a person. And what that would look like is valuing your time and your anatomy to go out and have your friends and your relationship and supporting those, because a person who's truly interested and invested as you as a person knows that you come with your village, your community, and
Mhm.
want you to, they know the significance of that and want you to maintain those relationships, and in hopes that should the relationship progress, they could be part of the community too. I know what that's one thing when I met my husband, and I introduced him to my family, and how he was like, wow, this is an extension of you. So and I'm kind of old school. I'm like, if you want to be with me, my family and my friends, these are extensions of me. These are my most treasured, valued people. So him wanting to embrace those relationships and be a part of it was, definitely a green flag. Also, I will say this. Someone who has a life of their own, someone who has their own friends, their own
Yes.
community, their own support system. You are not there. You should never be their sole source of any of those things. That's a big
Good.
common, that's a red and a green flag I just explained there. The green flag would be a person who has their own goals and objectives in life, things that they're striving for, outside relationships, because one pattern that I've noticed through the years is often those people, the abusers are isolated in a sense themselves. They typically
Mhm.
don't have friends. They don't have people that they're held accountable to, calling them out on their mess. They kind of operate alone. And so I'm not talking about associates, because they're charismatic, so the people they work with and things like that, they don't really count, but no true close people to them, that would definitely be a
Mhm.
red flag. But a green flag is definitely someone who is in healthy relationships. How do they demonstrate other relationships that are healthy? What's the relationship like with their mom and sisters and friends and things like that? Those are all very positive green flags, because typically, um, people who are abusers, they don't have that. And I like to hear, almost like a jobs make you have reference check. Well, people serve as reference checks too.
Oh,
um
that's good.
who can vouch for you and say, hey, this is my friend of X amount of years. This person has, who could really vouch for that person, a character witness, if you will. Definitely a green flag. Someone who's wanting to take their time as well and not wanting to rush. Because when you meet this person, you got to keep in mind, they don't know you either. Just like
Mhm.
you don't know them, they don't know you. So just really someone that's allowing time to pass for you to truly get to know each other and explore each other's likes and interests. I think is definitely a green flag. Slowing down, taking a step back, not someone who's wanting to, consume so much of your time. Those
Yeah,
are
I
some.
would definitely green flags there. I would add the thing about the relationship, other relationships in their lives. The person needs to have long term, sustained, positive relationship.
Mhm,
Yes.
We're not talking about people who are codependent upon one another. We're not talking about old patterns of family dynamics. We're talking about I chose you as a friend
mhm,
and we have been through some things. So
mhm.
that what that looks like is maybe we have had disagreements, we have had conflict, but we came back and we figured out a way to work through that conflict because
Mhm.
the flip side of that, that's the red flag, is like to Marcia's point, you don't have any friends.
Yeah.
Why don't you have any friends? Are you throwing everybody away every time they don't side with you or they don't agree with you, or are people running away from you because they don't feel safe with you? Right? Those are the things. So you need to have a big one also is how do they treat the most vulnerable people in their life?
Mm.
We're not talking about just how you treat your mama, your grandma, the elderly. We're talking about the little ones. We're talking about babies. We're talking about people with disabilities. We're talking about, you
Mhm,
know, um, people with special needs,
mhm,
and as well as just women in general, because you will have you will see a stark difference when there is a clear position of misogyny or internalized patriarchal thinking,
yes.
when that person has had has had no positive relationships
Mhm.
with the women in their life,
Yeah.
including siblings, sisters,
Yep.
okay?
Mhm.
And as well as the if I can just get real black for a minute here, the baby mama, are y'all amicable? And how
Mhm.
long has that been? How long did it take? Is
Mm.
she just is she just a garbage person? Are you constantly calling her out her name? How
Mm. Yep.
other thing,
The language.
the
Yep.
Yeah.
language you use.
Yep.
Another thing is that person's emotional regulation capability,
Capacity. Yes.
capacity.
Yes. Say
When
that.
they don't, and we're not even talking about just anger. We're talking
Yeah.
about the moment I do something you don't like, now we breaking up. This is a person who sees conflict in every single thing. And so they are oriented to everything being a fight,
Mhm.
everything being a conflict, everything being a
Mhm.
drag out because I didn't answer the phone when you wanted me to, or because
Mhm.
I didn't make the food exactly the way you wanted me to, or because I wasn't holding your hand in front of so and so, such and such. I don't claim you. These are when you have these big emotional, outsized emotional responses, it is that this person is not handling their own emotions well. And so they're making that thing your problem and they are turning outward, and it's always about blame. When a person can, another thing is when a person can take accountability for when they have done something wrong. And we're talking
Mhm.
about not, I'm sorry I did this, but you did that. And that's how no, we're talking about a straight up, full stop apology.
Mhm.
This was
Mhm.
unacceptable. And
Mhm.
I can show you better than I can tell you how to
Yeah.
repair this harm, how I
Yeah.
will repair this harm. Come
Right.
prepared for those things. These are signs of emotional intelligence that you to Marcia's point, when we are slowing down in relationships, building and in courting and in dating,
Mm-hmm.
we get to know those
Yeah.
things. It's not a
Yeah.
curated version of that person. It's not the propped up
Mm-hmm.
facade that's always our best foot forward. It's not
Yep.
the dating profile online. It
That
is
part. Yep.
how I'm
The
seeing you in
real.
time.
And you know how they say, what you got to see them through the different seasons,
Yes.
or with a meme that say, you want to know how somebody really is, seeing when they're broke, when they're hungry, right?
Mhm.
When things don't go their way,
Right.
when they're feeling discouraged, when they're sick, and that all takes time, right? Because you have to have time, and like they say, people who are wearing costumes and have scripts, they're going to forget their lines at some point. You
Yeah.
can't keep a facade on, all the time, and it will slip through and be revealed. I'm glad you said emotional intelligence. That's huge. I think that's one of the biggest factors, of indication of whether or not somebody will be abusive. How do they handle uh, uh, sh- uh, problems and conflict and disagreements? How do they show up in those particular times? That is real. Yeah.
So, ladies, I definitely want to thank you. We only have a couple more minutes left, so I want you both to be able to um, share, your practice, provide your contact information to our viewers in the event that they want to utilize your services. And also, very quickly, I know during our mic check, we talked about a couple books. Again, this is not an endorsement, so I want our viewers to know, we're not endorsing these at all, but these are some things that we found helpful. I know a book that I found very helpful early on, not only in my walk with Christ, but just in general in terms of life. But I am holding up a book called Boundaries, and this book is written by Dr. Henry Cloud and John Townsend, and they talk about boundaries in different settings, and then you talk about boundary myths. So boundaries with your friends, boundaries with your spouse, your children, at work, and even boundaries with yourself, and then what to do when there is resistance to your boundaries. So I have found this book very helpful, and I have this book on my list this year to read again. I know both Marcia and Danielle, you both talked about another book
Yeah.
that deals with boundaries as well. So very quickly, mention what the book is, and then mention the ways in which folks can get in touch with both you with yourselves.
Absolutely. So the book, me and Marcia read it together, and it was amazing to be able to talk about it with a person. So that's always a thing we endorse, is like
Absolutely.
with your partner, with your dating person, be willing to do some new learning.
Yep.
The name of the book is Set Boundaries, Find Peace. It's written by a local woman, Detroiter named Nedra Tawwab. She has several books, and she's amazing. And that is not just about boundaries in intimate partner relationships, but between adult children to parents, between parents to young children, between siblings, and that kind of thing. And then the other thing that I think is just really good scaffolding, really good foundation, is a book that I think many of you will have heard of, called All About Love by Bell Hooks. So the late, great Bell Hooks, poet, teacher, anti-oppression scholar, wrote a book about love, what love is and what love is not. And that's incredibly important, that we interact with that, so that we are being clear about, what we're feeling, what we're seeing, what we're experiencing in real time. And it's kind of a love letter to all of us, saying that, like, you deserve love, and you need to know what it actually is. Should I say my contact information now before I send
Yes.
it? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Go ahead and say your contact information, because we got about 1 minute left.
Okay. Yes. So my practice is called Imani Yakupinga. It's a co-owned therapy practice. It means faith and resistance. You can find us at iyk-faithandresistance.com. And then you can email me at Danielle at iyk-faithandresistance.com.
Okay. And then Marcia, what's the way in which our viewers can get in contact with you if they want to come talk to you?
That would also be by way of IYK. So anybody wanting to reach out to me for services, that would be the platform as well.
Okay, perfect. Ladies, I so want to thank you for your time. We've had not only a rich conversation, but this has been informative. You probably saw me here writing. Like there's some things that I learned, through the course of our discussion. I'm sure that our viewers definitely learned something new through the course of our discussion. Ladies, I'm hoping, can we do our part 2 on trauma? Can we come back? Because we just didn't have time because we covered so much ground in our dating and domestic violence segment. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so to our Singles Oasis viewers, first of all, thank you to all our new viewers. Thank you to our returning viewers. We hope that you found this information to be helpful and eye-opening, because again, there are things that definitely that I learned that I didn't know about. Please know that these two ladies are not only two resources for you, but again, if you need to talk to someone about uh, your dating relationships, whether domestic violence is or is not a factor. I mean, these two ladies are definitely here for you if you want to talk about other aspects about life in terms of managing stress and so forth. Again, please utilize these ladies. Singles, please tune in again for our next segment. Our next segment is scheduled for Wednesday, October 29th at 7 p.m. And our special guest will be Tanisha Ashakur. She is the founder and director of Voices of Color. And we will continue not only our conversation about domestic violence, but ways in which the church, the ways that the church can serve as a resource for their parishioners or those that are currently experiencing domestic violence. Ladies, once again, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you. I want to thank you tonight for not only giving of your time, but giving of your wisdom and providing a wealth of information. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and sign off. So again, to our viewers, we want to thank you for tuning in. We love you with the love of the Lord. Remember, you are the apple of God's eye, and he has his heart set upon you. So have a good night, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
Bye.
You're welcome.